We are learning more about the Navy Yard gunman's past, his brushes with the law, and there were many of them. His reported treatment as well for serious mental illness. In May of 2004, Seattle police arrested Alexis for shooting out the tires of a parked car in what was described as an angered-fueled blackout. In August, he was arrested for firing a gun through his apartment ceiling, and law enforcement officials are telling the Associated Press that Alexis was being treated for serious mental illness, including hearing voices in his head in the weeks before the shooting. So based on these revelations, how in the world did this guy get security clearance to that sprawling naval facility known for its layer upon layer of security? Lise Wheel joins us. Fox News legal analyst Doug Burns, criminal defense attorney, joins us as well. Lise, there were so many red flags here. It makes you wonder whether the security background check was reckless or negligent.
Both, probably, Greg. I mean, look, you've got more than 4 million people that are on these independent contractors that are getting these security clearances. What that means is it's a paperwork kind of thing where they're shoved through some paperwork. They're retired agents, and I know this from firsthand experience. They're retired agents that go out there. They do a little bit of background check. They're supposed to up the background either 5 or 10 years, depending on your security clearance. That's a long time in the middle there that they're not doing anything. This guy got lost in between the cracks, and therefore we have this horrible, horrible tragedy.
You know, Doug, based on the preliminary information, this guy had have passed laws that say an employer can only consider convictions and not arrests.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it's a constitutional principle, and one that, as Lise just pointed out, caused a horrific tragedy. I mean, in other words, theoretically, if you haven't been convicted, you've only been charged with an offense, and therefore it doesn't matter. But in the context of background checks, it really should matter, because here in 2004, Greg, and then in 2010, the man discharged a firearm. Those facts are the facts, regardless of whether or not he was convicted in court. And from the standpoint of security, should have been considered.
Right. You know what, Lise? The law is increasingly protecting people who have been arrested, and in fact, including those that have been convicted. I'll tell you why. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has now issued a ruling that says that it's racial discrimination for an employer to undertake a blanket policy to exclude people who have committed crimes because it disproportionately affects African Americans and Latinos. Now, that's a federal agency.
Well, I disagree vehemently with that federal agency. I am sorry. When you go through, when you're either a federal employee or an independent contractor, and frankly, Greg, they should both be held to the same level. You have to disclose everything. When I went through my high security, they interviewed my kindergarten teachers. I mean, for goodness sakes. They interview everybody, anything and anybody that could be found. Why? Because is there any way that the government, is there any way to come after you? They blackmail you? Have you got something in the past they could bring out against you? That makes sense when you're talking about a high security clearance. And I'm sorry, I disagree with EEOC on this one.
You know, Doug, 12 people are dead, tragically,
yes.
And so many others were wounded as well. But I do envision some lawsuits here, maybe against the government under the Federal Tort Claims Act, but particularly against, they outsourced the security clearance check to a company, so they don't have immunity as the government does, and Hewlett-Packard was the subcontractor.
Yeah, that was
pocket.
That was a critical point when I learned this morning that they had outsourced it to a private entity. I think, you know, you could certainly conceive of a negligence theory, which is that they owed a duty to make sure that the person would be adequately vetted and the security would be adequately done. However, the counter-argument, particularly with respect to the way insurance might play into it, is, you know, intentional criminal conduct makes it a little more difficult. But I think there's viability to it, Greg.
No, but you're talking about criminal versus negligence.
Right.
So they don't really have to show intent. They just have to show that they were negligent in hiring.
Burden of proof is so much less.
Exactly.
All right. Lise Wheel, Doug Burns, good to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.